Things are working. We're just going to notify everybody on Instagram that we are live. Yeah. Salutations and good morning, everyone. Countdown is over. We are live right now. Camera's like over there. We are live for this book stream, and I am excited. No Ordinary Vlog channel. Let's go.
Salutations and good morning, everyone.
It stresses me out when it starts talking back to me after I've said things. Okay. Let's make sure there's sound. That's an important thing to do. Let's make sure you guys can hear me. We are live. Are you making sound? Yes, we are making sound. Woo! Okay. Beginning. First of all, once again, I am in my pajamas for a stream. This is why we like doing it on the vlog channel, because if wearing makeup and stuff and like real clothes at this point in time is not in the cards for my life, we understand each other. It was another one of those didn't wake up in time, but I still want to get in a workout and a shower before I like officially prepare myself for the day. So we'll get there. We'll get around to that. But right now we are talking about, I'm so excited for this book series. Magic is the first book in the Septimus Heap series by Angie Sage. Title of the stream is like The Wizards Down the Street from Harry Potter, because this is also a UK writer. And if we're being honest, I didn't even have to look that up. The line "shove off" was in the dialogue, and that's not American. that's a very minute population that would say "shove off." So here we are, Magic, Angie Sage. So let's go ahead, tell you a bit about the story. I will say it is I'm 99% sure this book is middle grade. Like, I'm fairly certain it's supposed to be for kids, but like it's a little aggressive. The book is a little aggressive. Yeah, it is a juvenile fantasy, which is just like a kid's fantasy book. But it's a little aggressive. It's a little dark. So here's what happens. First off, we got the Heap family. They're poor, live in the ramblings of the town, which is just like, it seems like their version of the projects kind of type thing. Everyone lives in like a room, and you're just all shoved in there. Heap family is mom, dad, and there's 6 boys. Mom gave birth to the 7th boy, but he didn't make it. And on that same day, husband, who was trying to find some medicine for the baby, husband goes out, finds a baby girl in the snow, takes her home. As he's entering the home, a midwife is leaving with their child who's wrapped up in bandages. And so now, instead of their 7th child being a boy, their 7th child is a little girl. Turns out she is the daughter of the recently assassinated queen. So you have the custodians. They're the group of people that held this coup. 10 years later, the custodians find out where the princess is, and they send an assassin after her. So in this world, the Heap family, they are ordinary magicians. So they can do some like low-level magic. They can do a couple spells. Nothing too crazy. You have ordinary wizards, and then you have the extraordinary wizard who lives in the wizard tower. She has ridiculous magic skill. I believe a lot of the power comes from an amulet that they have for all intents and purposes, let's imagine it as the Eye of Agamotto, but they have an amulet, and that, along with robes and stuff like that, help to give them their power. But that's the extraordinary wizard. They're super highly trained beyond anyone else. They have more skill than anyone else, even without the Eye of Agamotto. But the extraordinary wizard is the person who set up the whole situation of giving the baby princess to the Heap family. She finds out that the custodians know where the princess is. She goes to like grab the princess, try and keep her safe. In the process of trying to hide the princess, extraordinary wizard senses this child is buried in the snow dying. He is a young army soldier who is supposed to be watching the wizard tower to see what the wizards are always coming and going. It's like winter. He's in a very thin uniform. He passed out and is dying under the snow. So she takes him in, tries to heal him. But the assassin's after them. And now this boy who looks like he's fraternizing with wizards, so they take him along with them as they're escaping, so that way the custodians don't kill him. They end up escaping to this island with Daddy Heap's, his name is Silas. So they escaped to Silas Heap's aunt's island in the middle of this magical marsh that kills people. And they chill out there for a while. It is the princess Jenna, Silas, the extraordinary wizard Marcia, and Aunt Zelda, who is the aunt, Jenna's youngest older brother, Nico, so the sixth son, and then the young army soldier, whose name is Boy 412. So they're chilling there. At first, Boy 412 is just, he isn't having it. He feels kidnapped. He's trying to think of a way where he can redeem himself so the young army doesn't hate him. But over time, he realizes the people are trying to take care of him. They all start to bond. So Boy 412, in this marsh, there's just a very thick fog that comes over them to the point where you can't see 2 feet in front of you. Boy 412 gets separated, mostly because he just didn't want to be around Jenna and her brother Nico. So he wanders off by himself on this like little island, and he falls down a hole. As it's dark, he can't see, he's stressed, so he's like padding around, trying to like find his way around, and he finds this ring, puts it on. It's too big at first, but then it like shrinks to fit his finger, and it starts glowing. And it also starts providing him warmth. He follows the tunnel, and it leads back up to Aunt Zelda's house. So he's chilling. Later, they're being attacked. And we find out that the person that led the custodians in the coup was Dom Daniel, the leader of the dark arts, and he has an apprentice. His apprentice is a stolen child named Septimus Heap, seventh son of the seventh son. The only thing is, he's trash at magic. Like, he cannot do magic to save his life, but the reason why Dom Daniel kidnapped him was because seventh son of the seventh son supposed to be, like, uber crazy magical. But this kid, nada. Zip. Zero. So but they come, they're trying to kidnap and kill Jenna, all that good stuff. They end up, Dom Daniel sends the apprentice Septimus with this guy, the hunter, who's supposed to be really good at these types of assassin situations. They foil their plan, send him away. Kids being nosy as they are, want to try and see where the apprentice went, because, they don't want him telling Dom Daniel where they are. It's supposed to be a hidden island. So they, take a little canoe out of the marshes and find out that Dom Daniel is, in a massive boat parked on just outside the marshes. And at this point, Marcia, the extraordinary wizard, has been kidnapped by Dom Daniel. She leaves the island, and it was all a trap. And so he kidnaps her. The kids, being nosy children, are like, oh, she's probably on the boat. Let's go up there and, try and rescue her. They go up. They have a spell that Marcia taught them to keep them invisible. So they go up, and the apprentice, when he returned to the boat, everyone was under the mistaken impression that he returned with the princess, which was incorrect. And so, but Dom Daniel didn't know that. So he brought everyone up to the deck, including the prisoner, Marcia, extraordinary wizard, so she can witness the execution of the princess. But, that didn't happen. So as Dom Daniel's arguing and yelling at his apprentice, Invisible there are a lot of characters in this book. So you have Invisible Boy 412 goes up to Marcia, hands her the ring. Marcia gets taken away, but Dom Daniel catches them, but he spots them, because when you're invisible, you still cast shadows. So he spots them, and they're now trying to escape, but he's supreme dark magic guy, and he's also taken the Eye of Agamotto from Marcia. So he is causing a massive storm that's bringing in water and flooding the marshes so his big boat can chase them down into the marshes. And he does that. When they get to Aunt Zelda's, they tell her, Dom Daniel's coming. He is Marcia. He's coming. Zelda's like, Boy 412, take everybody downstairs into the tunnels, So they go downstairs. Jenna feels this, pull. She's like, I've been here before. There are these pictures everywhere down here. What is, and she's exploring all of this stuff. And suddenly, something triggers, and they open a new pathway. Follow the pathway down, and there's this beautiful, gold and gem-encrusted dragon boat. And Nico is a seafarer. He loves boat stuff. So he jumps right on board, and he's trying to show Boy 412 how to, move the boat. Boy 412 grabs, I don't think it's the mast, but he grabs a part of the boat, and Dragon's tail twitches. And then Jenna goes up and she starts petting the head of the dragon. And then the head of the dragon turns around, looks to her, and they start speaking telepathically. All of a sudden, thing floods, and now dragon is free. It starts sailing, it starts flying. Kids are freaking out, but they're like, dragon boat, save Marcia, who's still on board Dom Daniel's boat. So they go, and just in the sheer shock of seeing this dragon boat, he is pretty much frozen. At this point, Marcia, using the strength the ring gave her, escapes, but she escapes, she's stronger, she's able to steal the Eye of Agamotto from Dom Daniel, and they all leave. Then this boat gets dragged down into the marshes, and pretty much everyone dies. It's quite gruesome. We end the series with Marcia asking Boy 412 to be her apprentice. And he says yes. She's asked him because when she was teaching everyone the invisibility thing, he learned it like that. He pretty much just touched the charm that had the essence of the spell in it, and as soon as he read the words, he didn't even have to say them, he just read them and he was invisible. So she's like, oh, you're the guy, you have to be my apprentice. He accepts. They're having the apprentice supper, and for an apprentice of an extraordinary wizard, you are apprentice for 7 years and 1 day, and in exchange for 7 years and 1 day of your life, the extraordinary wizard offers to essentially give you anything you want with it, and they'll do their best to get it. He asks, I would like to know who my family is, because as a child of the Young Army, he was in the Young Army pretty much from like age 2 on, so he has no idea. And we find out, oh god, that on the day that Septimus Heap died, he was kidnapped by the midwife. But when the person came to take him to Dom Daniel, the midwife had actually been like holding and caring for her own son that was crying. And like, of course, Dom Daniel's person's late. So like, I gotta go. You're holding a baby. I'm gonna take this baby. And she's like, no, that's the wrong baby. Just give me the baby. And she leaves. So they took the wrong baby. So Septimus is boy 412. And the apprentice kid is that midwife's child. Full circle. I will say, like, the situation in which they describe him finding out who his family is, because it's essentially in that moment you have mom, dad, Jenna, who is still like pretty much basically still family. They're not blood, but they're still family. She grew up with them for 10 years. Nico and oldest son Simon, who is like 1000% gonna be a bad guy. And like, I know I've read a lot of the other books, but even if I hadn't read all the other books, I'd have known that Simon was gonna be a bad guy. 1000%. He gets kidnapped by the custodians because they're trying to get him to spill where the rest of his family is. And the lead custodian's like telling him, hey man, if you help us out, we'll make sure you're the extraordinary wizard. And Simon's just like, you know what? That sounds pretty good. That sounds like a solid deal. Even if it means turning over his family to assassins, you know, that's a solid deal. He's not okay. He's not going to be a good guy. He's not going to be a good guy. But the way they describe that scene is so emotional. I was tearing up. Septimus was tearing up. His mom was tearing up. It was emotional. It was an emotional situation. I loved this book. I really did. It was the longest book because I technically finished it last year, but it's the first stream of this year. But like, it was, according to Goodreads, it was the longest book that I read, and that includes Lost Stars. But granted, because Lost Stars, I think, would technically be more either YA or adult fiction. So just the text is going to be just smaller, even if it had less pages. But that's not the point. Like, I ate this book up. I was so invested in the story. And yes, I've read it before, but it's just such a good story. I will say, it kind of feels like the author may have shot herself in the foot by titling the series Septimus Heap, because at that point you for sure know Septimus didn't die. Like, that's the opening scene, but you know he didn't die. And then you meet Boy 412, and he kind of is like brought along this journey before we're told that the apprentice is supposed to be Septimus Heap. And so I know I personally, as I was reading it this time, and as I was reading it the first time too, was like, the title Septimus Heap. We have this random unnamed guy. A little suspicious. But I don't know. I feel like I still, just by having the title named Septimus Heap, everything that happened, you see this kid, Boy 412, super good at magic. Septimus isn't. I don't think you're Septimus. I disagree with that statement. It kind of took away from the shock value of having this whole big reveal Septimus is alive, because had it not been titled Septimus Heap, we just know it makes sense, because it would make sense that this woman just dropped off the baby princess with the family that just had a baby, because mom would then be able to like take care of them. She'd have milk, all that stuff for a baby. Since, especially if we had gone with the we knew the baby died type of thing, then mother has the milk to support this new child. There you go. So it all makes sense that way. And then, so you wouldn't necessarily question anything about the child that passed away until they brought up the whole I'm Septimus thing. And then your mind is just, what's going on? And then you find out that the 412 is Septimus, and then it just blows your mind. But so skill-wise, the book was written really well for this whole like bundle of twists. I think naming the series Septimus Heap really undercut that, and it hurt me. It hurt. It was so well done, but it hurt me there. It did. I will say, like I said, this book is gruesome. They try to burn a woman alive. You have the marsh brownies, which drag people down, scratch at your face and your eyes until you suffocate under the mud. The hunters trying to shoot Jenna with a silver bullet. Her mother, the queen, was shot with a silver bullet. We have ghosts in this story, and the ghosts exist and they look as they did when they died. So you have the old extraordinary wizard that was shot alongside the queen, who is just as a ghost wandering around with a bullet hole in his chest and blood and like dried blood on his chest. That's cool. And you also do have a point where at the end, the apprentice comes knocking on the door and is like, I escaped from the marsh brownies, help me. They take him in, and then Marcia, she doesn't kill him, but she does a spell to send him back where he was prior to something. But she sends him back to where he was. And everyone's like, why would you do that? She takes them out. She had just gotten back from a walk. She takes them out, and we find essentially what is the empty sack of the apprentice, just an empty sack of his body, because Dom Daniel consumed him to try and save himself. So this book gets actually quite gory, quite gruesome, but it is still like for sure a children's book, and you see like the children aspects in situations where, because I think Angie Sage, I think Angie Sage is really good at having a story and then going off and following a random character for a little bit and making that still feel so part of this world and not feel like it's just random kind of thing. So there's a messenger rat that we see, and we go off and follow the messenger rat for a decent amount of time. Even like and we talk about like the messenger rat's wife, conversations he has with her. We talk about his life for a little bit, and she's really good at making it feel cohesive with the story. But at the same time, I could have probably shaved off a solid 100 or so pages of this book if it was just focused on main characters and things that directly, if we cut out dialogue that didn't directly pertain to the story. But you can feel in that sense of a kid's book, a lot of kids are going to want to know more about this talking rat. Stuff like that. I also really appreciate how magic functions in this world. So you have charms. A wizard comes up with a spell and writes it down on a thing. And the number of charms you have of that spell, the number of charms you have of that spell depends on the number of times the wizard writes it down on that same kind of material. That's how magic works. And essentially, a lot of times you have charms on you. And I believe how it works is having the charm on you makes the spell stronger, but there's also just, if you memorize the words, you can then produce the spell. And so when you have the extraordinary wizard's cloak, that has a bunch of charms sewn into it. Stuff like that. Yeah. So I think that's a really nice way, because they also describe the different materials. Like some people have written charms on pieces of toast. There's, I think the invisible charm that we see in this book is written on like a stone. And when Marcia offers Boy 412 Septimus, the real Septimus, when she offers him to be her apprentice, she gives him this silver jewel pair of wings that have a flight spell on them. Which, by the way, Flight is book number 2. I'm also excited for it. I don't think that's the book I'm going to read next, but I'm very excited for it. But so I really appreciate seeing how they describe magic. There's also like when you're really strong with magic and when you're really like good at magic, you can sense the feeling of magic. When you've studied magic a lot, even if you're a non-magical being, you can tell when like there are a lot of different storms and weather things that they do that are magic based. The hunter can tell that that's made of magic. And you can see different like instances. For instance, they create a projection, which is a mirror image of whatever you're trying to think of. And Marcia creates a mirror image projection of the boat they're using to escape to try and distract the hunter. And the apprentice is able to like study it and see how it's reflected and stuff like that to know that it's a projection. So it's nice to see how magic exists for the magical, the non-magical, and just the mechanics of it. I will say, one of the few mechanics, the ghosts. There were also some pretty cool mechanics for ghosts. But they didn't stick to it. So there was a rule that ghosts can only be where they once have been. And they kind of bend this rule essentially for the sake of the plot. Really. So how we find out about this rule is that the custodians have essentially turned an old women's restroom into their office because it had a furnace, and so it was nice in the winters. They turned it into their office, but the ghost of the former extraordinary wizard can't hear their plans when they're in there because he was a good boy and he never went into the girls' restroom. On the flip side, there is this pub that existed, and it used to be super popular in the castle, but it ended up getting shut down and like boarded up. But as long as you have walked the castle, as long as you walked around the castle, you can get in there. So you have this very strict instance of the rule at the beginning of the book, which is essentially just he used to ensure that he has no idea that there's a spy living next to the Heaps to try and confirm whether or not Jenna is the princess. So that's a strict instance of the rules, but then you have this very loose instance of the rules to ensure that when Silas is going to look for his oldest son, Simon, who has gone missing and is said to have been with the custodians, he has a place to stay so that way he doesn't get kidnapped by when people start saying that he's in town. And that's really just how this mechanic is being used at this point, which is a little lame. But, you know, again, I think the rest of the storytelling of this book and the rest of just the story and everything that just goes on in this book, I think the rest of this book is so good, like so good and so enveloping, and like it has, with the like realistic gruesomeness of the book, is good at being a children's book that I, as an adult, could still really get into. So I have absolutely no problem with reading the book, reading the rest of the series. I have, I think, the next 2 books. I think maybe the third, maybe I have book 4 as well. But I do have every intention of reading through at least the next 2 this year. But we are probably going to do something else for the second book. There was an audiobook, actually, that I was very interested in looking at. So I'm probably going to be reading that. But yeah, 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10. Loved this book. Will 100% recommend it. But yeah, that's really all I had to say about it. So I hope you guys enjoyed hanging out with me for a little bit. But until next time, valedictions, friends.